Hi everyone, my name is Paul again. I just want to do a quick 3-minute video on equalization and the truths about equalization in terms of what is happening with equalization payments in terms of what's going forward with them. Now this presentation is one view of equalization. It's not deemed to be the only source, and I would encourage you to go out and read reports from the Fraser Institute, the banks, just to give you a different perspective of equalization. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a professional accountant by trade, but I focus on getting information out. So I'll focus on the GDP growth trends for 2010 to 2014, and I'll talk about equalization and GDP growth. Now, what I really want you to pay attention to, two key provinces who used to be the economic engine of the country, which were Ontario and Quebec. That's where the bulk of the manufacturing is. They are recipients of a significant amount of equalization, which is coming from Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan as part of the overall GDP growth that happened from 2010 to 2014, driven by the oil sector. So despite what all the rhetoric you're seeing in the East, the beneficial benefits have been Ontario and Quebec. And yet these provinces have been up in their air around in terms of their policies to support expansion of oil through pipelines into the eastern refineries as part of supporting economic growth. So it's one way to say that you want equalization payments, but it's another thing to stop growth, and that's what's really kind of happening in terms of the rhetoric going between provinces. So this is something that shows you, illustrates you, there are beneficials of that growth. Now the second point, how equalization comes into play, they look at the average growth rates of the provinces, and it's a way to, the ones that have a healthy economy, give more money so those provinces that don't have the same revenue capacity can share that. So Ontario's going through a growth along with Quebec with 2% growth. So that means they are actually going to be contributing more money, which means that money means they'll be less dependent on equalization, especially Ontario. Now the problem is some of these provinces have relied on that money, and now once you take that money away, they now have a revenue issue, and that's what I'm going to show you with the next slide. So when you look at this, this is showing you GDP growth. You're seeing Ontario and Quebec are actually growing better than Newfoundland, better than Saskatchewan, and better than Alberta. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, both Ontario and Quebec are in a growing economy, but since it's on a moving average, that factor of calculating GDP growth hasn't come into play in equalization. Now, that being said, what could be done? Very quickly, we could get pipelines built. If we approved this, we could move the oil to the East Coast. That oil revenue would benefit Alberta, help its slowing economy, allow more revenue into the buckets. That revenue could be used as part of the provinces as well as being shared across. We also need a focus on expanding exports, where that means port expansion, pipelines, rail, to get our goods to market. Exports are down by 25%. For each $1 billion of export, it generates 5,500 jobs. So if you're looking at succinct ways of dealing with issues in this country to move exports forward, it's very critical that we get the governments together to push the agenda to get pipelines built and get goods moving to market to help the internal economy as well as exports, because that's critical to drive revenue as part of the overall sluggish economy. And that's something that I encourage many of you to ask your politicians to come up to the plate and make a decision of how they're going to move things forward. Thank you.